talk about something now which is very difficult for many people to discuss, which is why we're discussing it, because this week marks National Fertility Awareness Week. Presenter Victoria Derbyshire has spoken out about her experience of miscarrying while she was on a plane, and she said she found it so upsetting that she couldn't talk about it for 5 years. That is a long time to be keeping something so bottled up, something so traumatic. And Myleene, I know this is very close to your heart, sadly, because you've had experience and you've made a documentary.
Yeah.
Do you still understand why it's so difficult for people to talk? You know, we talk about everything now.
Well, we say we talk about everything, but we talk about the things we're comfortable with. You know, we've just had Baby Loss Awareness Week. Now we've got Fertility Awareness Week. We've got all these weeks that are coming up because we're not talking. So I've been Victoria. I was exactly the same. I couldn't speak about my 4 miscarriages for 5 years, and they just obviously kept on happening. And it wasn't until I held he's now my rainbow baby, that I could actually begin to talk about it. But then I started filming a documentary called Miscarriage and Me. So miscarriages in the title, and I couldn't say the words. And I'm thinking, I've got all the film crew, they're here in my sitting room, ready to make this documentary, and the words just stuck. I understand it because it's utter trauma, it's grief, it's the fact that you've got this grief that's got nowhere to go. You don't have the body, you don't have the memories, you don't even have a voice. So all of this is just caged up inside of us.
Why did you decide to do that documentary when it was proving to be so difficult?
Because I got to a point where all I was doing every time I had another miscarriage was Googling, looking for people that had been through similar things, asking people that had been through the same experience, and I wasn't getting anywhere because no one had any answers, because no one's talking about it. Women's fertility is so under-addressed. It's just sort of tucked away. It's an inconvenience. It's uncomfortable. Who wants to talk about dead babies? Nobody. And yet, I would wager, from what I do understand about miscarriage, that half of the audience have either experienced it, which I'm terribly sorry for, or have very close contact with someone that has experienced it. 20,000 women every single month in this country alone are experiencing it, and we're doing it alone. So we're torturing our women folk, and there are so many things that need to be changed.
But is it because some women don't want to talk about it or find it hard to talk about? Or
we're bound by old wives' rules. Why don't we, say in the first trimester I'm pregnant? Who came up with that awful rule that
wait till the,
we keep it a secret, and then you then have to go, oh, I was pregnant, then I lost it.
Yeah,
so you've got a double reveal.
That, I think.
Also, we're bound by, you have to have 3 consecutive miscarriages until you get any medical intervention. There's no reason for the number 3. The doctors I've campaigned with and spoken to have said, well, in America it's 2. So there's no viable reason, no logical medical reason.
When you say medical intervention, do you mean just
help? Yes.
Generally.
We'll look at why you're miscarriaging. And here's the worst bit. When they did look at why I was miscarriaging, none of my miscarriages had anything to do with the other. They all were different trisomies, which means, there were different genetic problems. One was a missed miscarriage, which I didn't even know what a missed miscarriage is. It turns out there's different miscarriages. So every time I had a miscarriage, it was a different kind, which then makes me
what does missed miscarriage
It means that this is one of the worst. Your baby dies, but your body continues thinking that you're pregnant. So all my photos, when I look at that time, I'm pregnant. I'm very visibly pregnant, but my baby had died already and my body didn't tell me.
You don't know until you go for a scan or something.
I found out at a scan. So all of these things are going on, and then we then say, well, why don't women talk about it? Because the grief and the confusion and the shame. We don't even look at male infertility. God forbid that we question any of their virility. But we don't look at the women, so we certainly don't address the men. I found out that men should be drinking less and not riding their bike so much or driving.
But also that grief of miscarriage, Colleen, I think men often get forgotten, partners often get forgotten. And obviously they haven't got the physical pain of that, but they have the emotional pain of losing a baby.
My brother-in-law was actually Bernie's husband, and after she got pregnant, and it was after Erin, who she'd had, and then she got pregnant again, and she miscarried. And I've never seen a man so broken, to the point where he said, let's just stick with Erin because I cannot go through that again. But a lot of men, like you say, they don't. It's almost like, look, she was carrying it, it's her body, you know, forget that it was your child as well. I think men do get forgotten as well, but I also think, again, that men feel they don't have a right to say how sad they are because it's the wife or the girlfriend or the partner that's gone through it, and they think, oh, I've got to be supportive of her.
We included this in the miscarriage documentary, my partner and I discussing it, and it was probably the first time we'd discussed it, because he was so busy dancing around my grief, he didn't feel that he could then say, here, have some of my grief on top.
He had no right.
Then I had my daughters, they were also in it, and people said, why did you put your daughters in this documentary? And I said, because they were expecting... They're expecting a brother or a sister. So I actually think the way that we combat this is we don't need another week, another named, titled week. We need education in schools. We tell you what to do, how to get pregnant, or if you do A, B, C and D, biologically, this is what, you know, creates a baby.
How not to get pregnant at school.
And how not to get pregnant.
On, don't they?
But why don't we say, actually, it's very difficult to get pregnant for many, and if it is, this is what can happen, and these are the pitfalls, and these are the options that you have, and these are the choices available to you, and this is how you can help yourself. And actually, most of the time, it's not your fault. There's nothing you could have done to have held onto this baby, and just take that off our shoulders.
And I think that's also the sad part about fertility is the trying and planning and looking at your monthly schedule in terms of your ovulation, and then planning it, and then having that sad news of saying I'm not pregnant, and going through that, and all of the IVF treatments. And I've watched family members and close friends go through that time and time again, and then have to be around other women that are pregnant and seemingly having this lovely pregnancy whilst they're still at stage 1, still not able to fall pregnant. So, you know, fertility in itself is such a wide, vast subject that does need lots and lots of conversation.
And we were saying, because women find it so hard to talk about, often you discover when eventually, if someone is lucky enough to eventually become pregnant and take a baby to full term, it's only then that they sometimes even mention. You know, you say, oh, it's your baby, and they say, well, I actually had 2 miscarriages before that. And, you know, I've had that with... I thought quite close friends sometimes, and you will go, "Wow, I didn't know," because it's just so difficult and so traumatic to talk about. So thank you for talking about it today, Myleene, because I know that's never easy. And if you have been affected by anything that we've just discussed there, please visit our website where all the relevant helplines are available.